What up, watch peeps? I've slowly been dialing in the dimensions and the features that I'd like to see in my perfect everyday diver. I realize that's a moving target that's not the same for everybody, but today's watch nails a few things that I think many of you like as well. What are they? Let's find out. I'm Pete, and we are Chillin' with Watches. First check. I am wearing the Christopher Ward C65 Aquitaine, and man, I am crushing hard on this watch, harder than I ever thought I would be. There'll be a review on this one coming up soon, but today we are here to look at the Clemence Photic diver, and I wasn't kind of neat minimalist packaging, and I do appreciate that. And I was gonna skip this outer box here, but there's kind of a cool card in there that I wanted to show you guys. So it's kind of like your welcome to the family type card with some minor instructions. But what's really cool is they are helping reforest Scotland, and they show you here kind of like your tree species and the location of where it is planted. And I just thought that was cool enough and worth mentioning to show you this outer box. Inside again, the minimalist box continues, which again, always appreciated. And inside you will see this sweet gradient dial Clemence Photic diver. And you might notice it has a ratchet clasp, which is another thing that I really like. So besides this beautiful blue gradient or fume dial, there's also a straight blue dial and there's a black dial as well. But they are all also available with, besides silver hands and markers, you can get bronze gilt hands and markers, which just looks fantastic. The black one is super hot. Size-wise, these are 39 millimeter divers, and they run $587 on the bracelet. Let's take a closer look at this dial, which is just gorgeous. Definitely the most attention-grabbing aspect of this particular model, especially. The shade of blue is terrific. The gradient is just right, and that sunburst effect really just draws you in. I really like their rather simple logo at 12 o'clock, and while there is 4 lines of text, they are understated and well placed so that they're not overbearing in any way. This is a no-date watch, which is one of my many ideals that we are going to get to. I love a no-date watch and not having to worry about AM and PM when setting. Now, the markers on this one remind me of the Christopher Ward C65, one of those original hand crankers with the numbers at 12 and 6. In a great way, I absolutely love that watch. They have stick markers everywhere else. Now, these are really nice applied indices, and they are jammed full of 8 layers of C3, which we all know is the best lume. It's science, yo. And we'll take a good look at that at the end of this video. Now, the hands are a kind of long, shallow taper that stretches all the way to a pointed tip. Also kind of reminds me of the Christopher Ward, but still managing to be its own thing. The crystal is a double-domed sapphire that sits flush with the bezel. The bezel is a coin edge with a kind of thin insert. It's made of domed sapphire, and it is lumed as well. Now, if you'll notice, there's a thin band of kind of polished stainless steel in between that bezel insert and the crystal. That is not part of the bezel. It does not rotate, so I'm assuming that is part of the case construction. The action on the bezel, it's got a nice medium resistance, if you can hear that, very clicky with only a slight bounce back on each click. The case at 39 millimeters is again another one of my ideals. I love this size for an everyday diver. Even though the large dial and thin bezel insert make this one kind of present and wear more like a 40, it is still a great size. And I have a mostly brushed case, brushed on the sides, brushed on the top of the lugs, with a thin polished chamfer running along the top edges. You have a really nicely balanced profile view with drilled lugs, and you have a crown that is 6.5 millimeters, signed with a large C for Clemence. Flipping it over to look at the case back, and you are in for a treat. The rotor decoration and the Geneva stripes really make this movement worth looking at. It's a really pretty view back there. Even the alternating blast and brush spec sheet that goes around the sapphire on the back side looks pretty cool. And you'll notice from this view that we have solid female end links as well, which are connected to a 20mm oyster style bracelet. The bracelet tapers from 20 down to 18 at the clasp. I really wish it were 16. I think that would be ideal for a 39mm watch, but the 18 does allow for this ratcheting style on the fly adjust clasp, which is another ideal for me. I really want that on the fly adjustment. Now the bracelet is sized using big old screws, super easy to adjust, no problems there. Now the only downside to this clasp is its thickness. It creates kind of an edge right here when it's on wrist, but the first time you need to let it out in the summer heat, you will still really appreciate having that on the fly adjust. Shwing! You cannot complain about this accuracy. It is running at a bulletproof 0 seconds per day deviation. Basically perfect accuracy. No beat error either as well. Look at that clean, smooth trace. That's fantastic. Amplitude probably would get a little higher at a full wind. I just put about 15 turns on the crown, and this thing is running like a dream. We are looking at a 39mm case that comes in 46.6mm from lug tip to lug tip. It measures 12.4mm thick, that is including the domed sapphire crystal, and it has a 20mm lug width. Going over some of the other specs, we have a double domed sapphire crystal that sits nice and flush with this domed sapphire bezel insert. Uses C3 Lume. It's running the Miyota 9039 movement and has 200 meters of water resistance. And on the OEM bracelet, sized for my 7¼ inch wrist, it comes in at 157 grams. Here is how it wears on my 7¼ inch wrist. Really a fantastic size for an everyday dive watch. I'm really starting to love these 39mm watches. And here's how that 39mm presents next to a 40mm Invicta Pro diver. Obviously a much thinner watch. I got a crazy acrylic dome on this thing. But I think you can see that smaller dial, even though this is a 40 and this is a 39. Make these two wear pretty similarly. Moving up just a little bit to 40.5, here is the Seiko SPB. Now I would say that smaller dial would make this thing wear a little bit smaller, but the bigger bezel kind of cancels that out. And this one wears pretty true to size, where this one wears at about a 40mm. Moving up just a little bit more, since I have this one out, here is the 41mm Christopher Ward Aquitaine. And again, I think this one somehow manages to wear a little smaller than its 41, this one a little larger than its 39, putting these two on pretty equal footing. Lastly, I have the Seiko SKX at 42 and change, and here you can see clearly just a larger watch, much thicker, bulkier proposition. That smaller dial does help it a lot, but it doesn't quite get it down to the size of the Photic. Lastly, let's check out that C3 Lume.
Keep the Lume.
And I say it all the time, you just can't go wrong with C3 Lume. It is just so good. It looks great in the daylight and even better in the dark. Fantastic application of Lume and a great choice. So there you go, the Clemence Photic Diver. This watch has a great balance of old and new. The sizing and the bakelite look of the domed sapphire bezel insert give off vintage vibes, while the beautiful dial and the ratcheting clasp show off its modern construction. All that adds up to a great everyday diver proposition. So go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. All right, before I let you guys go, sneaker check. I'm wearing some new gray Vans I picked up over the weekend, and that's it. I'm out. If it's not too much trouble, please like, subscribe, and come back next time. Peace.